Honourable Senators, I rise today grateful to be on Algonquin Anishinaabe territory to discuss a topic of immense importance for the economic landscape and social fabric of our country. That is the vibrant, robust, and growing Indigenous business sector in Canada. I invite you to join me in looking specifically at Atlantic Canada. Senator Klyne's inquiry has unearthed a compelling narrative of entrepreneurship and self-determination, one that deserves not just our attention, but our admiration and our support. Nova Scotia is home to a rich tapestry of cultures, but none as deeply rooted, of course, as the Mi'kmaq people. Today, the Mi'kmaq continue to enrich Nova Scotia with their vibrant culture, significant contributions, and unyielding spirit, reminding us of the profound importance and acknowledging and respecting the First Peoples of my home province. Reconciliation often revolves around historical injustices, land rights, and cultural preservation. However, economic reconciliation is a key component to any conversation about reconciliation. In this speech, I will highlight the achievements of 3 Mi'kmaq businesses in Nova Scotia, starting off with Clearwater Seafoods, a major Indigenous-owned company, then the Muin Clothing Company, a thriving, medium-sized Indigenous business, and I'll conclude with the Mi'kmaqi Craft Supplies, a smaller, resilient Indigenous business led by a Mi'kmaq woman. Let's start with Clearwater Seafoods. The Mi'kmaq people have long been leaders in various sectors of this economy, from sustainable fishing to artisan craftsmanship. Their contributions go far beyond what is typically portrayed in mainstream narratives. It's crucial to acknowledge that Indigenous businesses are not mere subsidiaries of a broader Canadian economy. They are embedded into the fabric of our nation's financial framework. According to new research by Hampshire, in Atlantic Canada, Indigenous businesses, and I quote, generate billions of dollars in goods and services, end quote, equating to 5% of the region's gross domestic product. An admirable example of this, of course, is Clearwater Seafoods, whose success during the past few years has been outstanding. In 2021, Clearwater Seafoods, a Nova Scotia-based company, marked a groundbreaking moment in Canadian fisheries by becoming 50% owned by the Mi'kmaq Coalition, a collective formed by 7 Mi'kmaq communities in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador. This acquisition wasn't just a business transaction. It was a historic milestone, representing the largest investment in the seafood industry by any Indigenous group in Canada. According to Withers, Clearwater boasted a staggering $71 million increase in sales compared to the previous year. More importantly, this investment stands as a transformative change, placing First Nations at the forefront of the global seafood industry. And the impact goes beyond financial matrix. The acquisition aims to foster greater opportunity and prosperity for Indigenous communities in Atlantic Canada, exemplifying a new era, folks, of economic partnership and shared wealth. In addition to this, it is also an example of economic reconciliation and collective empowerment. We can learn much from this business example, and I think about them every time I walk through the Halifax-Stanfield Airport with much pride, and I'm sure my Nova Scotia Senators' colleagues do as well. Now let's turn our attention to a medium-sized company, the Muin Clothing Company. Indigenous economic engagement centers on community and culture, distinguishing itself from conventional definitions and practices of entrepreneurship that primarily emphasize individual economic gain and wealth accumulation. In Indigenous context, entrepreneurship is geared towards fostering broader positive outcomes, such as the preservation and enhancement of cultural heritage and the overall development of community. Derek Lewis, a member of Millbrook First Nation near Truro, Nova Scotia, transitioned from being the first Indigenous cell phone game developer in Canada, the Red Arrow Digital College, to immersing himself in cultural consulting and then eventually returning to his passion for art following starting a master's degree. In 2018, he founded the Muin Clothing Company, blending his artistic talent with his entrepreneurial drive and passion. This Indigenous company stands out for manufacturing the first made-in-Canada orange T-shirt in partnership with Stanfield's, a significant marker for Indigenous recognition. Derek Lewis's Muin Clothing Company made a monumental step with the initiative, not merely being a business move, but stemming from Lewis's desire for authenticity. In the lead up to National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in 2021, the scarcity of the orange T-shirts, often sourced from abroad, was noticeable. Lewis saw the disconnection between the purpose of the orange shirt to raise awareness about the legacy of residential schools and the fact that they were being imported. Imagine a man of action partnering with Stanfield's. Derek Lewis of Muin Clothing Company ensured that the T-shirts were both produced domestically and produced by an Indigenous company, thereby emphasizing the deeper significance and authenticity of the message they carried. Derek's collaboration with Stanfield's also reflects a commitment to the Truth and Reconciliations Commission Call to Action number 92. This call to action urges the corporate sector in Canada to adopt the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a reconciliation framework. It emphasizes meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples, ensuring equitable access to jobs and training, educating staff on Indigenous history and rights, and supporting Indigenous-led initiatives. At the heart of the Muin Clothing Company is the drive to narrate the nation's story through apparel, ensuring Indigenous involvement at every production level. Derek Lewis's philosophy resonates with a simple truth. Genuine art carries a piece of the creator's soul. My final example is a small, thriving business, McMaggie Craft Supplies. While we often direct our attention towards larger business investments, it's crucial not to overlook the profound impact of smaller enterprises, particularly those owned by Indigenous women. Despite women making up 51% of the Indigenous population in Canada, they make up only 41% of the self-employed Indigenous population, according to the National Aboriginal Capital Corporation Association report on Indigenous women entrepreneurs. Indigenous women face unique challenges when starting and owning their own businesses, according to NIAC. Some of these challenges include lack of access to financing due to ineligibility for certain programs and resources. Indigenous women have been faced with the responsibility of taking care of their family, parents, often grandparents, the lack of support from their communities and chiefs and council, and lastly, the lack of knowledge and education about financial literacy, business planning, regulations, and management. Despite these setbacks, Indigenous women are motivated, they strive for personal autonomy, and continue to pursue their passions and dreams of starting their own businesses. And these businesses do more than just contribute to the economy. They serve as vibrant hubs of culture. So here's my example. In March of 2020, Teresa Muse, a dedicated Indigenous student support worker, noticed a major gap in resources reflective of Mi'kmaq culture for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. Recognizing the need and fueled by the positive reception to homemade educational tools she had developed during her tenure with the school board, she embarked on a journey to launch her own online business, Mi'kmaqi Craft Supplies. Partnering with a Mi'kmaq publishing company, she turned her grassroots tools into professionally developed resources that not only fostered cultural education for non-Indigenous individuals, but also strengthened cultural ties in the Indigenous community. However, the journey wasn't without its hurdles. Being off-reserve, Teresa grappled with a distinct lack of resources and guidance, from the absence of Indigenous economic development officers to the intricacies in tax reporting for Indigenous off-reserve businesses. Encounters with programs like Nova Scotia Indigenous Tourism Enterprise Network hinted at opportunities, but often they didn't quite align with the unique needs of her business. But despite these challenges, Teresa Muse remains committed to her mission, offering a platform that educates and immerses individuals in Mi'kmaq culture. Traditional crafts, handmade with techniques passed down through generations, not only find a marketplace, but also offer a unique educational experience. Consumers of these products get a tangible insight into Indigenous culture, a form of storytelling that goes beyond written or spoken word. For Indigenous entrepreneurs, these businesses serve a dual role as sources of financial independence, but also as a method of preserving cultural traditions. To conclude, honorable senators, from the pioneering steps of Clearwater, joining with the Mi'kmaq Coalition to lead transformational change in the seafood industry, to the heartfelt endeavors of Teresa Muse with Mi'kmaqi Craft Supplies, and on to Derek Lewis, whose T-shirts have become more than just apparel. These are significant markers for Indigenous recognition. Each tells a unique tale of Indigenous resilience, innovation, and tradition. Across Nova Scotia and indeed Atlantic Canada, and indeed this country, there are many, many examples. I want to thank you, Senator Klyne, for introducing this inquiry and allowing me the creative space to talk about some of the Indigenous businesses that thrive in my home province of Nova Scotia. We wish them continued success. Thank you. Asante.